Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Slow Your Roll. I'm Cody.
I'm Alex.
And today we're doing something a little different. We are going to be going over the top ways, or some of the top ways, that TTRPGs have completely changed our lives for the better, and we'll likely do the same for you and anyone else that plays. So the first category that we're going to get into is really just social skills. I mean, you might have expected that. It's a social game, of course, most TTRPGs. So, but yeah, social skills. I mean, this is something that you need for everything, literally, but this is more importantly something that you're definitely going to get with TTRPGs if you play them long enough, even without trying. You're going to adapt a lot of these things like public speaking. I know a lot of people hate public speaking, but running any kind of like character where you end up talking with your group or whatever, especially if your group's a role play heavy group, you're going to definitely get much better at public speaking.
Totally agree. And honestly, if you think you have trouble going in front of the class after you were in front of your friends making this voice for 12 hours, you're fine.
Yeah, for real. It's a good icebreaker for sure in a lot of ways, internally. So there's that. There's also teamwork. I mean, obviously, like everything you do in most TTRPGs, especially like D&D and the most popular ones, you're going to be using teamwork constantly. That's all you do, really, unless you're one of the lone wolf players that is just kind of miserable to play with. But don't be that person and it'll be okay.
That's okay. They don't get invited back.
Yeah, exactly. And of course, working as a team, you're going to be going through all sorts of ways and exploring conflict resolution as a whole. Through all of this, you're getting communication skills with your friends. You got like a whole, like you actually establish a new community. Like if you're new to D&D, when we first started playing, I met so many people, even online, and like even just like learned about new people on YouTube. There's a whole community behind TTRPGs that's pretty awesome, and there are so many cool like discords to get into. Like there's actual opportunity for social connection there if you don't have any friends like I did. And then just like social skills in general, you're going to be getting this stuff nonstop. That's all the game is. It's just like social all the time. Even in combat, the pillars of D&D are like social exploration and combat, but social is spread out through all of that all the time, technically.
100%. And honestly, even in the most strategic game possible where everyone's a combat heavy guy, good luck running that without talking to each other. And social skills aren't really the only thing. So when it comes to the players, it's really great to have the people around you to help. But when it comes to the DM, there's world building, storytelling. There's so many different mental muscles that you're able to flex while you're just trying to make the world and take your friends along through it. And as you're taking them through this world that you've created, it really does show your leadership skills to be able to actually point them in the right direction. You're leading them to, X marks the spot, the goal. And as you're leading them through this diverse world, there could be some pretty complex topics that you go over. It's not often in life that you have to talk about things like the genocide of the Drow, or, being accepted into this faction because you're from the other faction. You don't actually have to deal with that in real life, but it's much more prominent in fairy tales and TTRPGs. So living that out could help to teach you lessons that you wouldn't have learned in the first place.
And the third really big takeaway that TTRPGs can teach you is kind of just through the aspect of role-playing. Being able to understand where you fit in a group, both like mechanically speaking, like what your character is able to do and all that stuff compared to, your team, but also like the silliness back and forth with like talking with these made-up personalities and everything else. Both aspects of that role play pillar of the game can be incredibly helpful in just like teaching you and making you better. For example, it's one thing to like teach yourself creativity. Some people, aren't that creative to start with, but you can kind of like teach yourself creativity with TTRPGs. But it's even harder to find a place where you can collaborate creatively and actually get better at that. And TTRPGs is literally the best thing that I can think of for that, to be honest. Playing D&D as long as we have has been incredibly helpful for me to be able to, brainstorm at a table with more than just myself. Like we've got like 6 people there and we're just brainstorming this really silly but awesome concept of like a character or backstory or world event or whatever. And that's not something you get anywhere else. On top of that, being able to role play back and forth with like your character's personality is a huge way, even if it's like fake scenarios, it's a huge way to teach you and your group empathy. Like you can seriously learn to like understand people's thoughts and feelings about actually fake but important topics And that is something that's definitely carried over for me in real life too. And many GMs, whether you've only just started or have you've already been playing for quite a while, you will know that playing a TTRPG with a group of people that you don't necessarily know that deeply, not knowing what they're going to do, regardless of the story you made, you will learn to improvise for sure. That improvisation is incredibly helpful in a lot of ways that I've carried over into real life, not least of which is being funnier. Like actually, you think faster after you play TTRPGs. You literally think faster, and you might have just the right comeback when your bully is bullying you, and you say, "Hey, yeah, well," and you hit them with something so deep that they just. I don't know where that's going, but yeah, the whole roleplay aspect will make you very, very, incredibly more adaptable with a group of people than you would have been without playing TTRPGs, in my opinion.
No, for real. And if we were going to be talking about like a job for a minute or even a class, for a fact it'd be so much better of an icebreaker if everyone just got up into 5 groups and started playing a game of D&D instead of doing the what's your 3 favorite things. And I just mentioned the icebreakers at a new job, but there's a lot of different job experiences that you might be able to find at a TTRPG table as well. First and foremost, and probably the most prominent, is going to be event planning. Just trying to organize your friends is a feat in and of itself. It's not just a Facebook meme, I promise it happens often. And learning to work around that is invaluable going forward into your life. You're also going to learn to teach certain things, especially being the DM. You kind of have to teach certain concepts that you're trying to relay to the table. And what better profession than a teacher to go into after you've already mastered that. And there are certain people skills that you'd be able to develop as far as customer service or like sales and marketing. They would just help you to get one step into the door.
Yeah, and I mean, with all of these, it's not necessarily like you can't put, I played D&D on my resume, but you'll notice that with a lot of these, if you're already in these professions or professions where you're doing these things by default, you will straight up be better at them and have more experience with them the more you play TTRPGs.
Exactly. And job experience isn't just what you put on that fancy piece of paper that no one reads.
Yes, but all is not well necessarily in the how TTRPGs change you world, right? There are negatives to playing TTRPGs. I know. Just hear me out, okay? These negatives, in a lot of ways, don't have to stay negative. These are all negatives that you're going to end up experiencing throughout life in many different ways anyway, and TTRPGs are actually a great way to find a way to handle these negative things. So first off, looking at it with that lens, you'll already see what I'm saying. But first off, time commitment. Playing TTRPGs with your friends takes a long time. It takes both actual learning and mastering your schedule to be able to actually make time, because it's like 4-hour blocks of playing these games together, So it does take a commitment of time, legitimately.
Right.
But if that's something you struggle with, this can actually be a good way to discipline yourself with it.
Exactly. And, there's no second screen with like a person running on a train collecting coins while someone talks to you.
Or impressive platforming Minecraft playthroughs. And very similarly with the time commitment thing, if you struggle with that, you may also struggle with general dependency. Like you may be that friend and you kind of know it, that you never really respond to people. If someone's trying to make plans and you're like, yeah, I'll go, but then either something comes up, or honestly, if it's like an anxiety thing and you're like, man, I actually really not ready to go out today to do this thing or whatever, it's something that is consistent technically. So it's something that you can use to actually help yourself be better at that. Another thing in that same vein, all kinds of interpersonal conflicts of sorts. If there's stuff you like, this can be a self-therapy situation too. You'll learn a lot about yourself when you're trying to make a character that interacts with a bunch of other characters that all have emotions and backstories and everything's dramatic. You'll actually learn a lot about yourself in that way too. And if you've got the right friend group or the right approach to that, you can overcome those things in a lot of ways too. Lastly, this one especially applies to GMs, burnout. Burnout is something that you can definitely encounter playing D&D, TTRPGs of any kind, as a player or a DM. There are tons of videos online from really good dungeon masters and players, and people that are like actually professors even, that can teach you how to deal with burnout and like do it through the lens of playing TTRPGs. And like I said, all of these negatives are things that may come along with playing games at your tabletop, but they're things that you could actually be better at too, for the same reasons.
No, absolutely. Things like time commitment can be seen as like, oh shoot, I have to do this every Wednesday. But it could also be that thing where it's like, is it Wednesday yet? You know, it could
Exactly.
be the interpersonal conflicts where it's like, you know that somebody at your table and you kind of always butt heads about this like certain thing because your characters are pretty different in that way. I'm looking at you, clerics and warlocks. But it could be an easy way to work around that. It's a fake conflict that you and your friends are making, and when real conflicts show up in real life, you're all the better for it. But really though, when we're talking about all these different negatives, the most important thing to remember is that we're all really just there to have fun. Not everything has to be this big deal or stress you out. That's what life is for. We're just here to roll some dice. What has D&D taught you? Please leave that down in the comment section below. And until next time, I've been Alex with Slow Your Roll.
And I'm Cody.
And we'll see you later.
See you, everybody. Okay, so me and my wife, we got something in the mail randomly. That was like a big box. And we're like, what even is this? And it's like a gift. And we're like, did you order something? And we're like, no. So we read a thing, and it's actually a gift from the company Element. It's like LMNT. And by no means is this like a sponsorship. In fact, it's going to be kind of the opposite almost.
Okay.
But they're like, here, try these new things. And they're just like drinks. And I was like, cool. They look fun. They're like, no sugar drinks or whatever. And so I take a swig of this thing, right? And just like, it tastes like flavored ocean water. Like, it is incredibly salty. And that's the whole thing. It's like, I actually read it, and it's like, it says like stay salty on it and everything else. And it's like meant to be salty. This can has 1,000 milligrams of sodium in it. It is the saltiest thing I've ever had in my life. It's insane.
Have you ever drank anything before and been thirstier afterwards?
This is it, for real. This is it. Okay, so that's the story.
That's awesome.